I'm going to wait for him to text back, but he does have the link, so when he logs in, we'll just note it.
Okay. Ready? In the back. Are we ready?
Yeah. Here we go.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started with our special meeting for our budget workshop. It is 8:31 on June 8th. We'll do a quick call to order and a roll call of the board members.
Thank you. Director Garcia is out today. Director Moore is here, correct?
Yep.
Vice President Jenkins
Yes. Here.
and
Present. Forgive me.
Present.
Forgive me.
and President Young.
Present.
Thank you. And Director Channing has stated that he will be calling into Zoom, and we'll note that when he calls in, and he is at a remote location that's listed on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll dispense with the pledge today. This is just a special meeting, so we'll go to public participation then. Maybe the food.
Public has arrived.
Well, the important public has arrived, right? With the is public participation.
Oh,
We
no,
received
that's
nothing, yeah, we received no email, nothing on Zoom, no participants, and nobody in person.
All right, well, seeing no one here, we will go ahead and close public participation. So today we just have the one item, the budget. I'll turn it over to John and Bill, although I will say that once we can get the food here and set up, we might take a quick little recess. So we'll just kind of we'll just figure out a time to kind of do that. So everybody can get a little something in their bellies. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank the board for assembling today, taking a look at the fiscal 25 budget. And I think I'll just turn it over to Bill, and he can take us through a presentation and the details of the budget.
Very good. First off, I'd like to say good morning and thank you for taking time out of your week to come here. So today we'll go through a summary level of the budget activity, and then we do have the detailed activity sheets that we've provided as supplemental information. So I'm sure that first go through the presentation, and after that we can get down and look on an account by account basis. We're prepared. The directors for each of the areas are here, and they're available to answer any questions that may arise. So with that, I'd like to start off with going through the actual budget process that we went through as a work group. Maybe as one of the technical difficulties we're having is find out who's actually got the clicker to help us through this. Very good, thank you. So the budget process at the district is one that we take very seriously, and it goes through what I call several iterations before we arrive at a final product that is brought before the full board. The first step is that Finance Department prepares preliminary worksheets that are given to each one of the departments, and it's down to the division level and down to the account level. They then have the ability to develop individual department budgets based upon having the current budget activity for the current year that we're in, and then also all the expenditures plus forecast information in order to develop a preliminary budget. Once the departments feel that they're in a position where they've put their best foot forward and identifying all the costs as well as revenues, we go through what are called challenge sessions. The challenge sessions are held in our administrative conference room, and we have a group of individuals, the department heads, the relevant supervisors, as well as the general manager and assistant general manager, and we go through on a line item by line item basis, identifying the cost as well as any revenues going into each account to make sure that they're appropriately stated for the upcoming year. The next step after that, after we feel that we've accomplished our best effort, we go to the finance committee, and then we have a presentation followed by a line item review of the budget inputs. Once that's taken place, we will come out of the meeting with adjustments, and then we incorporate those adjustments to go to where we are today, which is a proposed board review of what we think is a final budget, with the expectation that there could be some additional adjustments that take place today. There may be additional requests, or there may be challenge to particular line items. There may be things that have been overlooked that we want to incorporate. The next step after that would be at a full board meeting. We've tentatively scheduled that for June 20th, of which we will have a board adoption. And then after that, the budget will be distributed to the various stakeholders, which include the county, which includes posting it on our website for our ratepayers, as well as our bond holders also get copies of the final budget. Our final budget is also going through an external review process through the GFOA, which is, separate and apart from our review, but they also want to make sure that we're following government accounting standards. And when we do that, if we meet all the requirements, we will have the opportunity to win an award. As we did last year, we plan on submitting, and last year we were successful in getting a award from the GFOA, and we anticipate that we'll do the same this year. In putting together the budget, there's so many different factors that we have to consider, and we've just listed what we believe here are the most important ones. Without belaboring each and every one, you can see that we take into account how we're going to be selling our product, which is the revenue side of the business. We also look at the customer growth. As you've seen in prior demonstration of a presentation by Daniel Guerra, where he showed all the different development activity that's going on in our service territory. We have to take a look at that to factor in what kind of increases in our needs from new customers are going to be and how that impacts our service territory. We also look at the property tax growth each year. As we get more parcels that become developed, that increases the property taxes that we get. And then the 2% growth rate that's applied also to the property taxes. We take a look at our investment portfolio and the earnings that we get. Right now, the interest rates have been very favorable from an investment standpoint. We anticipate they'll continue to be favorable, but we have decreased it slightly because we don't think that these higher rates are going to be sustainable over the next year. We think there might be a slight downtick. In our budget, we also take a look at our salaries and benefits. We look at each individual employee to make sure if they're up for a rate increase, their step increases, that's calculated into the labor rates. We also take a look at the COLA adjustments per union agreement. And with this year, we've also incorporated a placeholder for the class comp adjustment. We're going to be having, for the first time in over 10 years, a market rate adjustment that's been negotiated with the union, but we still don't have that final information at this point. So that particular number is a placeholder that we've added into the budget. In putting the budget together, we take a look at important things such as electricity, our fuel that we need, chemicals, and other supplies. And as you know, our suppliers' rates aren't going down, but we have to make sure that we do a good job of analyzing and forecasting what they'll be. We also address replacement funding, making sure that we have enough money set aside for our new capital additions. And finally, we take into account our bonds that we have, as well as our new loan with the state revolving fund. So all that's incorporated when we put together a budget. So it's done with a lot of detail and care by the department. The district has been very thorough in making sure that a proper budget is being put into place by having an approved budget policy. Here what we've done is just list some of the items from within the budget policy itself, the more critical items, so that you're aware, and for the public also to be aware that the district takes great pride and concern in making sure that we're putting our best foot forward of what we think it'll look like in the upcoming year. From a board standpoint, it shows that the board is willing and if necessary to adjust rates. And when we talk about rates, we're talking about our water rates, also our other service rates, as we provide other things besides water, and there's charges that go with that. And that we make sure that the board allows us to have the necessary resources for us to do our job in the upcoming year. So that means that we have enough funds set aside to take care of the operating requirements, making sure that, that we're paying our people at the appropriate market rates so that we can continue to attract and retain top talent. Next slide, please. So this is a budget summary taking a look at, I call it the highest level within the operation on one page, what it looks like. What we do in this particular area is we try to show you where we were in the fiscal year 22-23 and see what the net result was. And we do this so that you can see the reasonableness and the trending over time that takes place. We also evaluate our current budget, and taking our current budget, then we apply a final forecast. The final forecast consists of data through the month of May, as well as what we consider forecasted items that either are encumbered through purchase orders or are activities that we know that will be coming in or need to be accrued for. So that develops our final forecast, and then we come up with our proposed budget. In taking a look at where we think we'll be from our final forecast for the period 23-24, we're forecasting 2.7 million. We also are forecasting that our operating expenses will be 29.5 million, and that we will have income before any capital contributions of 11.5 million. So this year it looks like where we stand will be at 11.5 million. We'll also have our capital improvement program of 30 million this year. So that means we've done a lot of work, and the Romer is the biggest portion of that, as you know, with total expenditures going out the door of 61.2 million. Of that, a portion of that money is coming from our reserve funds, which we set aside. The remainder is coming from operations. So in this particular case, if we look at the income before capital contributions, 11.5 million, the difference between the 11.5 million and the 18.5 million is the amount that we're drawing from reserves, or it would be in this case $7 million. So this year the department, or I should say the district, has done a very good job that a lot of the work that we're doing is being funded from general operations. Our proposed budget for the upcoming year of 24-25 shows that our proposed rates are 41.6 million on the revenue side. Our operating expenses are going to be at 33.9 million, about 1.5 million difference than the operating expenses from the prior year's budget. And that we are having a net margin. We anticipate a $5.7 million net margin. But then we have a capital improvement program of 27.8 million where we're going to be actually spending money, and then with the total bottom line reserve transfer of 22.1 million. So if you see the 22.1 million and you take away the income before capitalization, that means this year we're going to be drawing more on our reserve fund. And that's not a totally surprise that we're having to draw from reserves. Next slide. Our operating revenues this year look fairly robust compared to what we did the prior year. Our current budget, we're anticipating total revenues, operating revenues of 33.1 million, slightly up from 32.3 million. What we anticipate is that we're going to be selling a little bit more water than we did in our forecast for this year. You can see the $17.9 million for our water sales. We highlighted that because we've actually had less than we anticipated, and it's for two reasons, we believe. The first reason is we've had a wet year. We had 33 inches of rain. And the way we calculate our rainfall here is we're not just one area on the valley floor. We have our area that we're responsible for and where we draw water from up in the mountains. And when you take a look at the combined rate between the versus the flat area, it's about 33 inches. That's our rainfall. For the area, it's a combined normally of 24 inches. So when we have more water coming in from the rain, that means people are putting less of it on the grass. And about 2/3 of the water is from outdoor use. So what you're seeing is when there's less rain, more people want to water their landscape. That's when our water sales will go up. The other offsetting factor that we see is there is an increased conservation awareness in the state of California. That's even going to become more amplified as time goes on. And there's new water regulations that are going to be coming down from the state. So we're going to have pressures going forward, and we'll be having an initiative that will help address that as we get further in the presentation. Our non-operating revenues this year, our final forecast is 11.2 million. We've done a little bit better than we anticipated. If you take a look at the current budget of 23-24, our property taxes are slightly higher than we had anticipated. That's due to more development that has gone on. So land that had previously been just at a land base, but when they build a structure on it, it increases the value of the property. We're seeing the benefit of that in increased property taxes. Secondly, we had budgeted $2 million on investment income, and in reality, we've done so much better than that. We're forecasting $5.3 million. That $5.3 million number is substantially better than we had anticipated. But before we go on any further, I thought maybe it would be a good time right now to maybe switch over and take a quick break.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
no,
thank you.
That'd be good.
Thanks.
So, Elvia said it's all ready, so grab your guys' breakfast, and then we'll reconvene, and you can go over the rest of the
Okay, thank you.
presentation. Thank you.
You're good.
I'm good. I think I knew this was happening.
Yeah.
Like,
But you had fun.
I had fun, yeah.
All here.
That's good.
Oops.
Thank you very much. So we left off at non-operating revenue, so we'll go back and we'll do a slight rewind, if we will. The final forecast that the department is, or the, should keep saying department, and let's say the district is anticipating, please go back there, thank you, to slide number 7. The final forecast of non-operating revenues this year is $11.2 million. That's substantially better than our current year budget of $5.3 million. So you can see that we've done some good things in that area, and we've also had some good fortune in the area at the same time. Our property taxes were slightly more, and we did a better job this year, I think, of forecasting our property tax revenue. So $3.4 million. Investment and interest on our reserve funds is at $5.3 million. A large portion of that, as you know, is the fact that the interest rates, current market environment, are a little over 5%. And so this year, with our over $100 million of funds that we have in reserves, we've been able to get $5.3 million in interest on our various investments. These investments include treasury bills as well as government bonds. Everything is done in a very secure manner, and then we have a small amount in our Lathe account with the state of California. Under the other category, $2.5 million this year. We did far better than the $200,000 that we had budgeted, and that result of a that we netted $2 million on. So that was a substantial one-time benefit that has helped the bottom line for the district for this current year. And looking at our proposed budget for 24-25, we have recognized that there will be a small increase in our property taxes based upon the rate increase that's imposed of 2% by the state of California. We did decrease our interest in investment earnings, and we did that where the market environment's going to be. And we think that there could be a small downtick in the interest rates. If that happens, we don't want to over budget in that area and become reliant upon it. Then, in addition, the $1.6 million in our other category, $1 million of that is related to the contract we entered into with Niagara Corporation. That's something that the board approved, I believe, either 1 or 2 meetings ago, the $1 million contract that was brought forth by Joanne as part of one of her initiatives that she was involved in. So this year, our non-operating revenues are anticipated to be $9 million. Very substantial. Next slide. Our debt service this year, we anticipate doing very well from a revenue standpoint. As I indicated, we have we end up believing we're going to have a $13.2 million net revenue positive. We do have a debt payment of $1.3 million. That's on our 2016 bonds, bringing down to giving us a debt ratio of 10.2. So we're doing very well in that particular area. Our proposed budget, we see that we're going to have a debt convenience ratio, or covenant ratio, I should say, of 5.9. The important thing is that we have to have a ratio of 1.2 or better. There is a upcoming debt obligation that the district has, and that particular upcoming debt obligation is the state revolving fund. That does not commence until the Romer project is completed. We anticipate our completion on the Romer project to be towards the end of next fiscal year. Best case, we're looking at June of 2025, but likely we'll go back over till the month of July. So that being the case, our first debt payment won't be until the following year. So we've budgeted on the basis that it will not take place until the following fiscal year. Next slide. In taking a look at our operating expenses for the upcoming year, it's $34.5 million. And this is the main group of categories that we do it for illustrative purposes. Operations, as you can see, is 18.4 million, and the other departments or areas of responsibility are substantially less. So basically, operations is basically our lifeblood to make sure that we're putting water out there for our service, in our service territory, and that we're maintaining the infrastructure that we have. Next slide. That same 34.5 million that you saw on the previous slide is now broken down into the various divisions so that you can see where the budget funding is going and where we forecast our results will be for this year. The important thing to take a look at is our current budget of 23-24 is 32.4 million, and our upcoming proposed ask is 34.5 million. There's a difference of roughly 2.1 million. We've isolated that into 4 key categories where the differences lie. 3 of them are highlighted in the gold color. The areas happen to be engineering, transmission and distribution, and in water treatment. The 4th area is a class comp market rate adjustment that we've identified of $500,000. So for the first one, for engineering, there's 2 areas that look like they're going to be the reasons for the increase. One is for a increase in a particular position coming forward, and then secondly, the biggest ticket out there is our water facilities master plan, one that's we're required by law to have, and it's now time for us to implement that particular one, which is causing the increases in that particular area. In the area of water treatment, there's multiple things that we've identified that are causing the changes. One is our Edison billing. We anticipate a large increase there. Repairs and maintenance, our other utility services, increase in the rates from the Edison company. We have some professional services are needed due to increased use of state water. We have to get the sludge out of that water. We also are experiencing higher costs in chemicals and supplies. And then finally, some repairs and maintenance items that we've identified that have been deferred that need to be moved forward. Probably the 4th one that should merit some discussion is our class comp equity adjustment of $500,000. That one has been embedded in each of the labor rates for each of the divisions. So we've included a 5% equity adjustment, and that's based upon the fact that the district has gone through the first time in over a 10-year period a class comp study. That class comp study is one that was done to make sure that we're in line with industry standards and that we're making sure that we can maintain and retain our top talent and not have our people start going to other districts. We train them and then they get the benefit of it. So following best practices, we undertook a class comp study. It's one that the classification piece is nearly done. We've gone through all the different classification sheets, and we're now in the final phases of the compensation where we compare ourselves to 8 comparable utilities. From there, we'll identify any adjustments that are needed for our labor. We feel that as a result of it not having been addressed for a period of about 10 years, we know that there's going to be some adjustments in comparing to market rates. The exact amount isn't known, but we have put in a placeholder of 5% of our total labor cost, which on $10 million results in a $500,000 adjustment. This is done following budgeting best practices. If you have an expenditure that's known to occur, it's something that you set aside funds for. It's something that we've already made a commitment through a union agreement that we're doing the class comp study, that there will be market rate adjustments. They're subject to negotiation as to the amount. But we know that the amount that we've put in, $500,000 or 5% of the total budget, is probably a good number. It could be slightly low, could be slightly higher than that, but we feel that's going to be a good range that will put the district in a position to show from a transparency standpoint, not only to our ratepayers, but to our employees, that there is activity going on in that area and that we've done our best to identify it. This is an amount that, you know, if we don't end up spending the full value of that, and let's say the market adjustments come in at 3% or 4%, the balance of that will go down to our unrestricted reserves. So the money will end up going back to the district and put it into our reserve fund. Until such time that the negotiations are complete with the union, that money will remain in our reserve account and will be earning interest. So this money is set aside knowing that there's going to be activity. We've already done a union contract identifying this is going to happen. What we don't know is that final number outcome. So we budgeted what we felt was the best rate number at this point. Budgeting 0 would be something that we would not be fully transparent, and we felt that we should be transparent and identify this to not only the ratepayers, but also identify it to the employees and other stakeholders in the community. Next slide, please. The district has right now currently 88 authorized positions. That number has varied slightly over the years, going back to fiscal year 2020. Going forward, you can see 89, 87, 87 in the last 3 years. The last 2 years, I should say, and the current year, we're leaving it at 88. We are making one recommended change, and that recommended change is taking the vacant meter supervisor position and reallocating that into a conservation analyst. And the reason for that is we believe it'll better align with what the district's current needs are. As you've been acquainted that there's multiple changes coming down from the state of California related to conservation, where there's going to be increased efforts and pressures put on us as a district for reporting requirements and also for going out and doing outreach in our community for making changes. So in other words, the state's trying to get us to use less water. And so we're going to have to be able to not only keep track of that, you know, from a statistical standpoint, we're going to have programs in place to make sure that there's consumer behavior that will allow that to happen. So we're proposing that we put a position in place that we can get ahead of that and not be caught behind times. We're concerned that if in fact that we don't be proactive in this area, that there could be penalties. And have you heard that there was penalties on a per day basis by the state of California that's proposed if we don't meet our conservation requirements? So we feel that this is a key position that will help us get out in front of that. So that's the one change we're making. We're not asking for a different body or another body. What we're doing is we're converting it to where we feel it would be more beneficial to the district. Right now, when we talk about our full-time vacant positions, if you go back a year and we were in the same room, we had 10 vacant positions, if you recall, and we had them at various amounts of times that were outstanding. And the board gave the staff the go-ahead and to make sure that we're able to operate at full strength. And I'm very fortunate and happy to say that that's been done. It has been a great effort by Human Resources as well as the district staff themselves to get us in that position. We have one open position that just came open for the purchasing inventory specialist. That was a person that was instrumental in the warehouse, the one that takes care of all our buying of the inventory to make sure that we have the proper parts in place. That position is key to us. Unfortunately, that individual moved on to another water district, local water district, for additional compensation. Had we been, I think, a little bit more competitive in that area, I think the likelihood of retaining that individual would probably be pretty high. So that's the one vacant position we have. As you can see, we had 10 last year, so I think we've done a really outstanding job, and We hope to get this position filled in the very near future. Next slide. We wanted to give you kind of a 5-year outlook on, from an operating standpoint, where we think things are going to be. Our proposed 25 budget shows that we're going to have an income of $5.6 million. And as you know, that money, that $5.6 million, doesn't go anywhere but other into our CIP program. So anytime we have more revenue than expenses, that goes into our capital. The out years, as we go into forecasting 26, 27, 28, and 29, what we've done is we've increased our labor or our revenue rates by 2%, and then we've also increased our expenses at a rate of 3%. So you can see the impact of that. Each year, our operating loss gets a little bit more. So it shows you that a 2% increase in our rates alone aren't going to necessarily solve our entire problem. Our non-operating revenue has been a very important part of us balancing our budget. And as we move forward, we still identify the fact that there's going to be additional operating revenue from property taxes, or non-operating revenue from property taxes and our investment income. But we see that there is going to be a deterioration over time. So next year, if we did nothing, we didn't have any water rate increases and did nothing, it looks like we'd have a $2.5 million excess that would be used to help fund our capital projects. Each year going out, you can see by 2029, it's less than $1 million. This type of analysis really helps us to realize that we need to do some additional work in-house. That means we need to take a look at our rates. We also need to take a look at how we spend our money and are we doing our best job in that area. Next slide. Next slide, please. So we're now going to go back one slide, please. You could go back to one more slide, please. Okay, if you could go back 2 slides, please. One more. There we go. Thank you. So we're going to discuss now the capital projects, the capital budget as you have. We went through and took a look at our operating budget, which is basically our operating expenses that we need for the current year. The capital project is more focused on our infrastructure, our long-term needs. That's basically our pipes, our wells, the equipment that we need to do our job. Those are all the things that basically allow us to make sure that the system is operating at its best and that we're meeting the current needs as well as the future needs of the operation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the total capital improvement projects that we have right now on the books, we have it broken down into 2 particular areas. The first area is carryover projects. The second is new requests for the upcoming year. The carryover projects amount to $43.4 million, and then our new requests are another $39.2 million. We break down the requests and the carryovers based upon the funding sources so that you can see how we are able to fund the various activities. On the next slide, we'll end up going into how the various projects that we have. But what's really important to us is the fact that for the funding in both our carryover and our new project areas, we're seeing more grant and community funding as we go through. We have a number of other items that are in the request stages that are not included in the budget, because until we actually have an approved earmark or a approved grant, we don't include it in our budget. But what's important to know is the district has done an outstanding job in seeking out revenue sources through the federal government, the state government, and will continue to do that. And as we continue to amp up this area, we can get more of our capital projects funded through other sources. I call it other people's money and not our money. That will continue to allow us to have more money set aside for reserves and to possibly keep our rates to our customers lower than they would be otherwise. So total right now is 82.6 million. Next slide, please. The carryover projects, what we've listed here is the top 10. They consist of 85% of it. And you can see the various projects that you're familiar with, each one of these from having approved these. All these carryover projects have been approved at one point or another by the board, and are just here to illustrate the nature and the fact that we have a lot of things going on. There's another 18 smaller projects that add up to 6.6 million. They're in your detailed sheets if you wanted to take a look at it, but these are the major ones that we have, and they're ones that we're working very hard to complete. Next slide. The next slide is our capital improvement new requests, and our new request, 39.2 million, and it's broken down into the various categories of replacement assets, new assets, and capital outlay. And I think that the district has done a very good job of just trying to identify the important things that need to be done. We're doing what's required to maintain our system and have it so that it's fully operational and that we don't have any failures. Next slide. These are the top 10 new requests that are made. There's 94 million. And you can see that the Romer has money in this particular category, and the reason why it's considered a new request is because those funds had not previously been requested in order to complete it. We had it on our 5-year outlook, but we only request funds that we anticipate spending in the current year. So we anticipate spending $39.2 million, and all of these are extremely important to the operations, and the biggest portion is the Romer. This will take us through the end of the year and make sure that the Romer is totally operational. Next slide. In taking a look at the 5-year capital budget, just like we did in our operating budget, when we showed you a 5-year outlook, we're doing the same thing in the capital. This year, our capital, as you see, is slated for 82.6 million. We have the carryover of 43.4 million, and then we have 39.2 million of new projects that we're planning on completing in the current year. Looking out over the next 4 years, once we get the Romer completed, you'll see that there's going to be more of a steady state, so there's going to be lesser activity as we anticipate, but still we're going to have new items. In our budget process, we actually go and we look at 10 years and not 5 years, but the further you go out in time, the less accurate it is, and there's always new activities that come up, new priorities, wants, and needs. Those cause us to make additional changes. But as our budget now looks, this is our 5-year outlook. We're only asking for funds for the current year. The other 4 years are done for illustrative purposes so that you know what's coming down the pipe. Next slide.
Hey, Bill, could we pause here for a minute? Elvia, do you have an update on the food over there?
Yeah, so sorry. We do have hot breakfast that's available if you guys would like to take a quick recess, and we've got something for President Young.
I thought that was all we had.
So did I. So, yeah. You want to take a break or keep going?
You can. I mean, I guess if we have it, then yeah, we probably should. So, Sorry, we'll take another break.
Okay,
then.
no problem.
Okay.
We'll take a pause. Thank you.
That finishes
Where'd you get them from? Oh, okay.
And
Versus one only populated by everyone else. I always enjoyed the chronic tacos, but it's good to have variety. I think we're ready for you. I'll try not to interrupt you again.
All right. Thank you.
That's it for the food. Okay.
We're going to switch topics slightly to going to talk a little bit about reserves. And this is got a kind of a good news story at this point. The good news, if we take a look at the district over the past several years, has been able to increase the reserves, and I think it's very much incumbent upon the fact that there was board leadership that made sure that we are fiscally responsible as we go through time. And if we take a look at where we are at the end of this year, we're looking at $118.2 million. We have unrestricted reserves, and when we have restricted reserves, restricted means that money is earmarked for certain projects and activities. Then we have the $80.2 million in this particular case is unrestricted, and it's such that those funds will later become earmarked for projects as they are approved by the board. But at this point, those particular activities have not been identified. Going out to our period of 24-25, we think that we're going to be having a good year, as we've indicated in our budget. The reserve should increase slightly to, we're forecasting $123.2 million. So that's a really good high water mark for us at this point. We are going to start seeing some downward trends, though, as we ensue over the next few years. Next slide, please. That downturn, as you can see, will start coming in fiscal year 2026, and that's as we continue to finish our construction projects. As you know, we showed you over $80 million of construction projects that are taking place. Those, as they get completed, that drives down our reserves. Now, the reserves would be driven down even further, but the fact is we got the $46 million state revolving fund 1.1% loan. So that helps us keep money in our reserves versus drawing them way down. So that's a good thing. But if we didn't have that loan, then you can imagine our reserves would be substantially less, $46 million less. So the loan has definitely been a big major factor for us. But this slide here is an idea to help recognize that as we move forward, we have to do other things. That means we possibly will have to have the rate study, as you know. We're going to have further reliance on other funding sources when we do our capital projects. And then additionally, our own operating. We need to make sure that we continue to operate as lean as we possibly can. But this is just an idea to give you a snapshot of what we think it'll be. That doesn't mean it necessarily will turn out exactly this way, but it's an indication that we have to take some activities and measures into account in order to make sure it doesn't turn out like that. Next slide. So to try to change some of that from happening, number one, and this has already been happening, is the district has really done an outstanding job of knocking on doors and filling out applications to increase our level of grants and earmarks and appropriations. This is something that was very non-existent a few years ago, but the board's leadership has made this something of a large priority for us. So the district is doing that with the current lobbyists that we have on board. We have a great team under Socorro's leadership that's also working hard in this area. We're going to see some great rewards. The fact that the board has been more active politically, going into both federal and state, and dealing with even our local people, we've seen that this is going to provide great rewards to us. So kudos to everybody that's been involved. This is a key factor in If you work on other people's money on projects that are really worthy, you're going to get the funding that you need. And so that's something that we need to really supplement our existing revenue sources. The other thing that we're working on is to complete the water rate study. That's something that we put on a pause. That's something that we want to ramp up and have something, to start looking at in our second half of this upcoming fiscal year. So our game plan would be to, over the next several months, to get that completed and then start in the new year taking a look at the process of outreach and then going through a Prop 218 process. The other thing, as we do each one of our projects, we need to analyze our funding sources, and that kind of goes along with grant funding, our own funding, and even looking at different loans that are out there. We just can't always take from reserves, because otherwise that particular source will dry up. We've done a good job of evaluating our target levels for our reserves. As you know, last year we updated the reserve policy. We continue to look at that on a month-by-month basis with our treasurer, and if there's any required changes or recommended changes, we'll bring it forth first to the Finance Committee, then to the full board. The purchasing activities of the district, we're going to continue to utilize a tool in our bag that we've been doing, and that's going out and looking at regional, national, and negotiated contracts. We call them piggybacks. Ones where somebody else has already done the heavy lifting and got a great deal. As you know, for example, in our last set of trucks that we bought, we used a state contract. Well, the state's going to get a heck of a lot better price than we will as a district, because think of all the number of units that they buy versus the number of units we buy. So by virtue of having the law in place that we can piggyback off them, we save several $1,000s a vehicle. So that's the type of thing that we got to continue to work smart as we've been doing. We're working on a cost of service study, and that's to make sure that when we put our own labor costs into grant activity, that we're capturing all the labor dollars. That means you're capturing your direct labor charge, you're collecting your appropriate overhead charges to make sure that everything is in there that should be. You don't want to leave anything off the table that's legally allowed to be charged. We've put together a developer impact fee update that came to the full board before. We're scheduled to come back sometime after the new fiscal year to get that again approved by the board. That was roughly a 6.6% increase over the current existing rates that'll be in effect at the beginning of the year. What we know there is that construction costs have gone up, and we in turn want to make sure that we charge the appropriate amount. Every dollar that we don't charge then ends up coming off the backs of our ratepayers. So it's better to pay it where it should be up front as opposed to after the fact asking our ratepayers to pay for it. And then finally, one of our jobs in finance as well as with the treasurer is we want to maintain our current credit rating. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that when there are loan opportunities that come up that we get a better interest rate. Just like in your own personal life, if you have a high FICO score, usually the interest rates you get on your loans are less. Low FICO score, you pay a higher interest rate. So we in turn are sensitive to that fact that we want to make sure we get the appropriate rates when we go out for funding opportunities. So with that, the next slide, please. We've come to the end, and we're here to answer any questions you have, and then let's get into details. We have provided detail sheets by each one of the divisions, and then showing the level of activity, and we're prepared to go through. Each one of the department heads is here, and as they've gone through prior challenge sessions, they're open to answering any questions you may have. So with that, why don't we throw it open to that portion.
Any questions on the presentation?
I just had a comment to say, and I know it's a repeat, but fantastic job by Bill and his team. Very detailed report, and it looks like you hit all the bases. You've actually suppressed any questions I might have.
Well, I'm happy to hear that we met your expectations, and as you know, there's been a lot of people in this room, and some that aren't in this room went into the development of the budget, and John gave us the leadership and the direction to make sure that we put together a tight budget for you.
Okay, Kelvin, any questions?
No, as usual, well done.
Thank you.
Well
Appreciate
done.
that.
I expected nothing less.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo that as well. Doesn't look like Channing was able to maybe join us then. Did we ever hear from him? Okay. Because I know one discussion point that we kind of had the other day was whether we should include the 5% for the comp now or just wait and do a budget amendment once the actual amounts are finalized.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion item, and one that I think that prior to final adoption, I'm sure that will get some further discussion.
Yeah, so,
As you're well aware that we've already made a commitment as a district to look at that. It's something that to recognize as zero would be probably understating our budget activity for the upcoming year.
yeah,
It also shows transparency by putting an item in there, both to our ratepayers
yeah.
as well as to our other stakeholders and to our employees. So it's one that we
Yeah.
feel that
Oh, yeah.
merits discussion, and it's one that can be looked at under both ways.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think the board is very committed to this, the outcome of the class and comp study and making the appropriate adjustments based on that. But yeah, there was a question of should we put it in now or should we wait till, again, doing a budget amendment once the amount is actually known. But I know that Director Hawkins isn't here to speak to that point particularly, but I don't know if any of the other board members have any strong feelings one way or another. I'm kind of indifferent. I'm fine with putting it in there if that's what the board would like to do. Or again, we can always do a budget amendment. That's not a difficult thing to do. So if we wanted to wait, we could do that too, and then just do amendment once all the final figures are known.
I think that that's a good approach. I think once the discussion's been completed and the board directions provided at the adoption, we can go ahead and remove that particular item. We'll have it prepared both ways for the final
Okay.
meeting, so that if
So
it-
we can have a discussion.
so you
there.
can have a discussion at that time, and you'll be able to either adopt. You'll either be able to adopt the one that we provide.
So,
as is
option
now.
A or B.
That's right. So you'll
Okay.
have an option. So because you haven't have the benefit of Angela's input either. So I think a big ticket item like that really should have the full board weigh in.
I would
and,
agree.
And I think there's pros and cons either way. I put it out there as a pro way, and I think that it's one that we know we have an obligation, and now it's just a matter of identifying it now or waiting until we have a more definitive number. So
Okay.
it'll be a good, healthy discussion, and we can adapt either way.
I expect we'll have more information on those compensation numbers. I mean, I don't think, certainly not complete, but Haiti, can you comment on that a little bit?
Yes. So the current position of the classification piece is almost completed. We are expected to submit the final classification adjustments or amendments that were made to some to CPS this week, and we hope to have the preliminary compensation piece the third week in June. So at that point, we'll have some sort of an idea of what the numbers look like, and we can then discuss the possibility of incorporating a number into our budget.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my question, because that would be the week of the meeting that we're going to adopt the budget. So would that be enough time, Bill, for your team to quickly update it, or would you need more time?
We'll be able to quickly update it. The way that we designed this adjustment, we put it into the labor component for each one of the divisions, and we put a flat 5% in there. So if the number ends up being less than that, or we opt to go to 0, it's going to be a very easy.
But I guess
Fix.
maybe my question is, would we actually know what the actual number is going to be that week then? So would we know, okay, it's actually going to be 5.9% total?
I would say the answer is probably not. And
Okay.
and the other thing that goes with that is the results have to be shared with the board, and then you're going to have to make a determination,
Okay.
assuming it's above 5%, how much you're going to be willing to do, and there would be certain recommendations that we as
Gotcha.
staff would make that
Okay.
on the implementation timeframe.
Okay,
So I think there's a lot of
okay, so-
moving parts here.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to
We
say-
were trying to put together what we call a good faith placeholder,
Okay.
recognizing there is an obligation, but, at this point, we don't know the level.
Okay, so we'll have an option A or B, depending on how we want to budget it, and then we'll probably have to come back in some fashion, most likely, to do some kind of an amendment once everything is finalized.
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
though, that evening, what I'm planning to do is having an option A for you or an
Okay.
option B, of which you would adopt one of them. One will have the 5% in there, or whatever percent we end up knowing at that point. The other will not have any adjustment in it at all, so you'll be able to adopt that evening your final budget. Then subsequently, if further information comes up down the road, then there would be a budget amendment at another point in time in the new fiscal year.
All right, well, I'll just thank you, Bill, and thank you to all the department managers and the entire team here at West Valley. Doing the budget's always a very time-consuming effort, but I do appreciate everybody's hard efforts, and I know I kind of already beat up on some of you at our meeting earlier in the week, so I'm just looking through to see if I have anything else, because so far I don't really see anything on my end, but I don't know if anyone has any detailed questions on any of the line items. Again, I've already kind of ripped through this once before, but Calvin, I don't know if you have anything. I know Dan and I looked at this earlier this week.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be on the committee, so I feel very comfortable with what we got in front of us.
I will make a comment. In our prior session, it was a detailed line-by-line item discussion, and there were items that we went back and made some minor
Mhm.
adjustments
Yep.
to. Further clarifications were required,
No,
and so we took into account the direction from the Finance Committee, and those were incorporated. So I believe we've met the requirement that you had asked
Mhm.
us to
Mhm.
yeah, no,
take care of.
you've definitely added the additional justification in places as we discussed and clarified, I think, some of the questions I had earlier in the week. I'm just trying to see if there was anything else that stood out to me so far. And I know you kind of mentioned it in your presentation, and I was kind of talking a little bit to Socorro on one of the breaks, but just how it sounds like we both of our senators put us up for all three of our spending requests, but as you mentioned, we're most likely not going to see that in this budget. It would probably be more possibly the following year's budget where we might hopefully see some of those appropriations if they do go through. But I know we'd already previously at the Finance Committee talked about the ones which we are working towards already, the ones that we are just now getting or should hopefully with Norma Torres's contribution one day maybe get,
Oh,
if EPA ever releases the funds.
That's a very good point. What
Yeah.
we did do is make sure that anything that we anticipate getting funding this year, that's been incorporated
Yeah.
as a revenue item. Additionally, we work very closely with Socorro's area, and as we find money coming in during the current year, we'll bring that forward to the Finance Committee and to the board for a budget adjustment.
Yeah, and I know I kind of brought up to John after the meeting, but we did put in the money for a consultant for grant writing if needed.
Grants writing. Yeah, Bill, can you confirm that? I believe.
Yes, we added in the area under Socorro's budget $100,000 for
Okay.
grant funding in that area.
Yeah, because
Or,
that was the suggestion that I had, Kelvin, that while I think we're hoping that we might be able to get some support from our lobbyists, that it might be good to have a little set aside in case a project comes along where we need to get a grant writer to come in and kind of help do maybe some of the heavy
Right.
lifting on. And then that way it's like, well, John, if we have it in the budget, that way you guys can just kind of move forward and grab somebody if something pops up and we need to respond quickly.
You get paid by the grant, right?
Oh, sorry?
It's $100,000. Just want to make sure.
Well, no,
Oh.
it's not 100,000 for the,
grant that they bring in.
It's,
not
we,
gonna
we,
cover the,
it'd probably be an hourly rate
Okay.
most
Yeah.
of the time
Oh, yeah.
with those.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
got
it's
you.
not like
That's
that.
my
Right.
clarification.
Yeah.
it was basically a general services contract for,
Yeah.
you know, professional services, on an as-needed basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, at California Strategies, there's some basic grant services included in their existing contract. CalStrat has additional grant services that we can ask for and pay for,
Yeah.
or we can go to another third party for
Exactly. Yeah.
if there's more expertise elsewhere for certain types of grant applications.
Well, and I was kind of thinking that I have a grant writer who I kind of have the same kind of arrangement where it's just like, hey, she charges me per hourly when I need her. Most of the time I don't really end up needing her, but if something big popped up and admin's like, hey, we really need to pursue this one, I can just pick up the phone and get her working, you know? So just kind of wanted them to have a little bit of flexibility there, as I know we're going to hopefully try to have a better
For sure.
that end of
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah, that was a great suggestion, and we appreciate it. That'll
Yeah,
be
so-
helpful.
So I think, again, I do really appreciate all the changes and the updates and the additional clarification. And, you know, I'll kind of maybe echo some of my comments that we made earlier in the week. Just, you know, overall, I think it's a very good budget. It looks like you all have done a really good job of planning things out and having good details here. I didn't really have a whole lot last time to go through, and I'm not really seeing anything that's
If I
coming
can,
to my mind.
I apologize for interrupting. If I can make a comment, Greg,
Sure.
I'm a little disappointed. I didn't see you pull out the ruler.
It's right here, sir. Yeah, well, they all made fun of me and my ruler on this week.
You're president. You're not the ruler.
Well, it's actually a newer ruler.
I
see?
saw that. Impressive, by the
Yeah,
way.
'cause
Yeah,
I
a
got
little
it at the
dollar
bureau.
bill.
Got money
yeah,
on the
That's what we
front?
got at the Bureau of
Oh,
Engraving.
I didn't know you got them there. Oh,
yeah, see?
actually pretty cool. Yeah, no, I saw that.
Yeah, see? Okay.
Oh, cool.
I still haven't taken my $2
see that.
bills out of the tube yet.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we look good. Again, we'll just probably plan on having that discussion, like you said, as far as which option A or B we would like to do. I would maybe recommend that maybe John, you and Bill can meet with Director Hawkins and Director Garcia to maybe just go over the budget ahead of time,
sure.
see if they have any inputs or questions,
it's-
since they weren't able to make it here today. But unless something pops out in the next minute or two, or if Kelvin finds anything, I think we all feel pretty good from the sounds of it. And I know I'm just, again, very grateful to all the hard work all of you have done on the budget. I think we have a really good budget here, and I know that next year we'll definitely have to start looking at the cost of service and looking maybe towards how we want to look at rates in the future. And I know we've had many discussions in finance about that. But I think as far as an operating budget, this looks really good. I think the capital budget looks good. And, you know, certainly we have the Romer project is like the biggest one there, but we do have several other projects, including the Bloomington project, if we can just get the money from the feds. But I really don't see any issues or have any questions. You have anything, Calvin? I know you're kind of looking there, and you're good, right? So,
Yeah, all kidding
just really
aside,
good.
I'm very impressed with all the managers here
Yeah.
to
so thank you
look
all.
and take care of the details, because you made it easy for us.
Mhm.
I would like to thank all the board members in attendance today for your participation and your comments and compliments. We very much appreciate it, and I know that staff, just want to echo your comment. Staff work very hard to make sure that we put together a budget that we can work with and meet the needs of the communities.
Yes, and thank you all for being here on a Saturday. I know it's a little time away from your families, but we do appreciate having you all here in case we do have any questions. And I'm just stalling for time now, but again, I appreciate it. And you know, I think that you all have a very good budget in front of you, and we look forward to seeing how the year shakes out. And we, you know, really, I know from the finance side of things, you know, as far as the committee, you know, we've always been very impressed and appreciated by how all of you managers have been not only managing your overall budgets, but also just how you're actually doing on them, because I know we saw that spending was actually a bit lower than what we had even anticipated in many places. So you're really monitoring your expenses and your staffing very appropriately, and I know that really helps the district's bottom line. And so I do just want to say thank you to all the managers for your diligent efforts in managing our finances, because it is I think probably one of the greatest strengths that we have right now at the district is that we are in a strong financial position, and a lot of that is because of all your efforts. So thank you for that.
Thought I could add one more thing. As we put the budget together, we certainly have an eye on the strategic plan that the board approved in January. We're still putting details to that by building work plans at the department level. So that's still in progress, but as we develop this budget, we believe the budget that's proposed here today will get us to achieving the strategic plan goals that were set forth by the board.
Okay. All right, good. Any questions?
I have no questions.
I'm just waiting to see if you have anything.
I'd like to see more money for scholarships for the schools.
Mm.
1,500 that's in here. Is that what I'm seeing?
You want to speak to that, Socorro? What
Page?
What page is that?
32.
32.
Which line item? Is it under?
So under this year, so for this 24-25, we have 2,000, which is similar to what we did this last presentation. So it gives opportunity for 2 students to receive scholarships, one for an essay, one for a video.
Could we expand that?
Excuse me?
Could we expand that? Could we expand that?
You want to use your
Can you put
microphone
your mic-
so that we
Oh,
can
sorry.
hear you.
Could we possibly expand that?
We can look into doing a possible, so this one's more geared towards high school students.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our contest, our poster contest for the 11 students. That's elementary. So we could
Okay.
look into doing something maybe
Mid-school?
middle school.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Or if the high school, maybe instead of 2, 4.
Yeah, where we can get the word out and get them involved
Yeah.
in water, I think we should do that, because that's where it starts.
More community outreach.
Yeah.
You think if we doubled that to 4,000, is it something you're in favor of?
To go to 5,000. But yeah, I
I mean,
think,
because we had the 2 the other night.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's
And they're,
$1,000 each then,
Yeah.
right now.
Correct. So it'd be
Yeah.
2 students, $1,000 each.
let's double that if we can. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe we
Yeah.
get
or
4
if you want to
students.
do 5, we can do 5. I mean, we have lots of high
personally,
schools in the
yeah.
Yeah,
we
you have lots of
high
yeah, lots
schools.
of high schools around
And
here.
so,
Sure.
I don't know how many charter schools we have out here, but I know
Mm.
the school, at least in the district, we need to make sure we give everybody an opportunity and spread the wealth with them and get them
Yes.
educated. Not only that, but just get into the district. They got a special needs center as well. And those kids get neglected, and maybe we should make a special effort to get to them as well, because they're now consolidated now. We can find them and know where they're at. So just a thought.
Sure.
But,
You want to bump it up to
But-
5 then?
I'm okay with with bumping up to 5.
You wanna go
I'm
up
okay
to-
with that. And then,
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
and
Why not?
disperse accordingly.
I was like-
Hopefully we have 5 kids. and-
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do a few more then.
Yeah.
We, now with the fully staffed department, we are looking to ramp up our outreach to schools and going out there and kind of sharing what different programs we have here at West Valley.
Get Creek out there. Want to see Creek suited up.
We'll go ahead and make the adjustment to make that number. And we'll either make an overall net change, or we'll maybe find somewhere else where we can trim.
It's only 3,000 more.
All right, so we'll add it then.
It's not gonna break,
Okay,
we're not gonna break our bond covenant
okay, then
over
we'll
that,
add
Bill.
3,000 additional expense.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, thank you all, and we'll go ahead and adjourn, and then, John, if you and Bill can just follow up with
Sure.
Director Hawkins and Garcia,
Thank you.
and we'll
Absolutely.
have the final discussion at our next board meeting then.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, everyone.
you,
Have a
everyone.
good
Thank you.
day.
Thank you.
Good call, Calvin.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. It should have been on my radar too.
Well, that's why, that's why we gotta
why
have
I
these
did one, yeah,
meetings
yeah.
so that we can catch things like that, because I I saw it, but I didn't see it change, so I didn't really think much about it.
I didn't think much about it either, actually.
Yeah. But no, it's good. And Lindsay's-
Oh, yeah. To me,